Well, holy hot tamales. What an evening it is here in China. Time check here is 6:23. And of course, we have an exciting show for you. Thanks everyone for joining tonight or today, wherever you are. Of course, we got great stuff to talk about tonight. And we have Fernando from Formube and of course, AJ from PTE. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. Nice to have you on tonight.
Thank
Thanks,
you very
Alex.
much, Alex.
As
Oh,
always, Alex, awesome music in the beginning. Those who joined the live chat late are missing out big time.
well, the good news is we'll give them a beautiful outro as well. Okay, we have AJF here is who is located in the United Kingdom. For all those that are not familiar with this channel, before we move on with this program, don't forget to subscribe with it. And Fernando, over to you. Tell the viewers where you're from, what you're all about, and then we're gonna jump right into it tonight. It is heavy. Over to you, Fernando.
Okay, well, first of all, my name is Fernando, and I run two YouTube channels. One is called Are We There Yet, which is my travel channel, and the other one is Fermube, as you're watching here, where I do some political commentary. Right now, I'm coming at you from Anhui. Every time I'm on your show, I'm in a different place. We just drove 3 days down to Anhui, and we are shooting some cultural videos here for my channel. So if you want to know uh, cool stuff about China that not many people get to see, then make sure to hit my channel. And well, I'm here in my RV trailer that I use to travel around the country, and joining you guys to talk about well the last day of the 20th, as is known here in China, and a lot of information not only related to China but related to the world as it relates to China, as it affects China as well. So that's me, 22 years in the country from Colombia, and yeah, very happy to be here with you, sharing my expertise and my insights into what has been taking place over the last few days in Beijing.
Thanks, Fernando. AJ, tell us the audience. Wow, this is going to be a firecracker today, man. I mean, everybody is on full cylinders here. So, AJ, your chat on the side chat here, your what do we call them? Fans? Can I
On
call them
fire.
fans, or you like to call them? I call them fans. They're way ahead of subscribers, man. These guys are fans. They're all over your comment box right now. Fire away, AJ. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to give my thanks to everyone that's tuned in, all the moderators, of course. Yeah, just really appreciative, really. So thanks, guys, for joining. I am in sunny Great Britain. It's not really sunny. It's very cold. And guess what? We've already had our first power cut. I live in
No.
Manchester, and we've had our first power cut yesterday. And it's in a small community, and it's a very poor community. So what they're doing is they're doing the poor areas first, by the looks of it. And
That's
so we
incredible.
had a
That's
3 hour
incredible
power
news.
cut yesterday. So I'm waiting for a power cut in my area, but I'm prepared. I've already bought a power unit,
Oh,
which
really?
should
Are you
last
serious?
me. Yeah, I
Are you
bought I
serious?
bought one from eBay. Yeah, cost me about $300, but I bought one from eBay.
Hmm.
So hopefully I'm prepared. I think the first thing I'll need to do is switch on the fridge because I got a lot of we have a lot of food on the fridge. It's gonna get pretty destroyed. So that's gonna be the first
Mm.
priority.
Oh my! So power cuts in the UK to start off. Beautiful next week. Boris's economy class floating back to the United Kingdom to see if he can
Yeah.
jump into the
well,
the
well, well,
prime
the fun,
minister seat again.
yeah, the funny thing is when Boris landed in UK, he had a big entourage of people greeting him with booze. They literally, there's funny clips all over the internet of everyone booing him when he landed. It was quite funny
Oh
actually.
my!
I, I,
Oh
I have
my!
something to tell you about that. I don't know how he was actually asked. He removed himself because of his incompetence, and
Yes.
45 days later, he is the UK's best option. How does that what does that tell you about the system that you guys have over there? And I tweeted something about this, saying like, isn't it a good time to maybe look at alternative systems of governance and selecting of leaders and um, uh, yeah, government that are not what you are used to? Because you look at America, who you're looking at? You're looking at, well, Trump or Biden. Which one of them is more senile already or more trouble? And to have Boris again after 45 days is just I don't
Yeah.
know.
The
The joke
the
writes
worst
itself, man.
the worst thing is we are still paying Liz Truss's salary for 1 year. She has a salary of 150,000 per year. So as part of the golden handshake, she has left the job, but she gets to keep her salary for 1 year
But
because
she's a fighter, AJ. She's a fighter.
She's not a quitter.
Fighter.
she's
She's not a
yeah
quitter.
yeah
She
yeah.
didn't quit.
Thanks for reminding me. One day before she got fired, she came on and said, I don't quit. I'm not, I'm a
I'm a
fighter." One day
fighter, not a
later, she's
quitter.
quit. And the
No, but
reason
AJ,
she's
sorry.
yes,
What's the news on the fact that she would get 145,000 pounds per life? Because that's what prime ministers get. Has that been discussed or?
no, it's not per life. It's definitely for 1 year. But the reason she gets it for 1 year is because um, she had a meeting with the 1922 Joint Committee, and as part of their rules, it says that a prime minister cannot leave their position within a year of being appointed, and they cannot have any no vote confidence and things like that. So that was brought up, and so she had two choices. She could either quit herself, or they can change the rules and force her to quit. So they agreed a deal where she quits herself. It's less hassle, and but they agreed to carry on paying her salary until the end of until 1 year. So as if Britain has enough money already, they're throwing away money, giving her a salary. It's the easiest money she'll ever earn in her life. This
Yeah.
and what I was talking to one of my friends, and they're saying that the British government is being run like a football team. Like a football team, Real Madrid, for example, they fire managers like they change their
Left and
hair
right.
every few months or every year, and they're treating Britain like it's some sort of football team. They're just having this rolling um, conveyor belt of leaders, and the funny thing is there's nobody left. There's nobody left to lead the country. And then was in the middle of his holiday. He was in his vacation in Caribbean. And another thing, Boris has been on 10 vacations this year, 10. And he was on another vacation now, and he's been obviously brought back with the plane saying, right, you need to come back to UK. We need you to leave. And he's like, okay. And this is when he got greeted with booze as well. But yeah, it's a sad state of affairs how Britain, this is not what you call democracy. This is I don't know what you call this. This is what you call a circus, really. And the fact that and nobody seems to understand that we are in this position not because of Liz. I mean, Liz made it worse, but we are in this position because of Boris, because of Rishi Sunak.
Brexit.
Exactly, Brexit, money printing, ridiculous sanctions on Russia, kicking out all Chinese investments, and loads of things. I can make a big list of things that he did over the years, and Liz has come in. Whoever comes in now is going to have it's like a poison chalice, really.
I have
Nobody
to
wants the
say,
job.
I mean, sure, it's a bit of money to pay her, but if you look at it from what some of these politicians make for speeches and stuff like that, or after they're out of office, how much money they make a lot more
Nothing.
money. But would you want to be dragged through the national press and hit headlines and break Wikipedia records for the shortest term in, a prime minister for 145K a year? No thanks. I mean,
Exactly.
I wouldn't sign up for that. It's amazing. So we have seen some pretty remarkable things this week, and of course, the media in the West is going to give you its typical sound bits and garbage as usual, and that's what we're here tonight to kind of offset that, to kind of give you, our view. You can take it for what you feel and compare it against the Western media's view, or the collective West, as we call it. Now, some things have happened this week that have been pretty extraordinary. There was a lot of focus around Xi's opening speech, really trying to get a hint on when this country is going to be open. I think if you live in China, you'll be well aware that I will call it the dynamic COVID policy works. As Fernando said recently on a show, no one's in love with this policy, but it saves lives. It saves people from getting sick. It's pretty damn effective, but people would like to see it gone eventually. Of course, all of us would, everybody would. But currently, right now, it's Fernando. I mean, your thoughts. You explained it really well when we talked about it the other day.
Well, there's something that needs to be said when it comes to COVID is now, for example, testing and tracing are just state of the art. It's just something that at the highest level you can think of. You can trace, you can micro trace, you can know exactly where people were and determine the times and whatnot. So the micro targeting of quarantines or lockdowns
Hmm.
is better, because, for example, talking to Mario the other day, he was told after 3 days that they could resume. So they detect something, they figure
Right.
it out. Okay, no, it's fine. Okay, let's go back to normal. So you go from whatever 6 weeks of lockdown in 2020, right, in Wuhan,
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
now 3 days of a quarantine or a lockdown. So that tells you how effective they are at tracing this, at determining where the problem is and who is in problem, who's not in trouble. That's the first thing to say. Now, the second thing to say is how convenient testing is. You guys, cheap plug, you know that I'm traveling around the country. I go from one province to another, from one city to
Hmm.
another. All I have to do is just register myself with my Alipay, and from one city to another, I get my QR code, my green code, and I don't have to pay for testing.
Hmm.
Everywhere I go, I don't know these places. All I have to do is ask to the bawan, the security guard, hey, where is there some free testing around here? Oh, go around the corner over there, there's some. Everywhere we
Yeah.
need to test is less than a 5 minute drive.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just next door. So it's become as convenient as, I don't know, going to grab a glass of water at a convenience store.
It's even more
They are
convenient than that.
everywhere.
It's
They're
more convenient.
absolutely everywhere. They work within 24 hours, and yeah, you take 5 minutes out of your day, and you're good to go, and we're all safe. We all, as you said it, yes, nobody actually loves it. We would rather not have it, but people here understand that that's the cost of staying safe.
Hmm.
There's lots of talk out there. I don't want to say this on my behalf, but I'll just reference Jeffrey Sachs when he says that he is relatively convinced that this is a lab virus. And then we hear news about America developing something with 80% mortality rate at a university. I mean, we're not happy with what's actually taking place with COVID. Now there's another thing out there. Again, I'm this is all speculation because I'm not a scientist and I'm not plugged into those circles. This is what I see out there. But that's a huge concern. And that explains why a lot of people feel that this is
Hmm.
a bioweapon against China. The
Yeah.
idea was to release it in China and to slow down China. And China has been very good at defending herself. They have
Hmm.
protected their people and us foreigners here in China to the greatest extent possible. And they are not about to start letting them win. They are not about to relax and ease
Yeah.
the measures to to let them win. Basically,
And
COVID is not going to be sure. Alex, go.
no, sorry, Fernando. And they're not about to take advice from 186 other countries that have failed.
Yep. Yep.
They're not going to take advice from a guy from a government that has lost 1 million lives. I mean,
Right.
who are you
Yep.
to say what is the right way to handle COVID when you have got more than 1 million deaths? That's ridiculous. When people criticize zero COVID, like, criticize your policy.
Hmm.
How
Hmm.
about you criticize those deaths were in vain, that you don't even realize that they let them die? The lack of leadership was what actually took place. It is so enraging, man, and I'm so happy. I mean, every time I talk to you, every time I talk to Mario, we're just so happy to be
Hmm.
living here in China. was so safe.
Moving on from this COVID talk, I mean, it is always on the minds of viewers when you relate to China, because everyone's waiting for China to be open. But I must say that if you see on the right or left side of your screen here, I've got a sound bit that I want to play for the audience. This was in the closing speech. If you want to see what a world leader is, or hear a world leader, start surfing the internet and get off the pages of CNN and Fox News and tune into some of these China media outlets, because listen to what this guy had to say about media, about China in the last couple of minutes of his speech here. Truly, absolutely remarkable. Boy, oh boy, would a lot of countries like to have a guy like this. Truly a treasure. Here we go.
中国共产党主张使世界的目光注视中国。
Do we have subtitles?
感谢你们的辛勤工作，大家辛苦。
They will do a translation in a moment.
Okay.
Over the past week, our media friends have covered the 20th CPC National Congress extensively. With your help, China's voice and the CPC's views have been heard across the globe, and the world has turned its eyes to China. Thank you for your hard work and a job well done.
欢迎大家多到中国各地去走一走，看一看，客观真实向世界讲好中国故事，讲好中国共产党故事，讲好我们正在经历的新时代的故事。谢谢大家。
We welcome you to visit more places in our country and present to the world unbiased and truthful stories of China, of the CPC, and of the new era we're living in. Thank you.
"见面会到此结束，感谢习近平总书记和各位常委，谢谢各位记者朋友，谢谢各位来宾。
With that, we come to the end of this press event. Thank you, General Secretary Xi Jinping and other Political Bureau Standing Committee members. Thank you, friends from the media and our distinguished guests.
To my Western audience, that is a leader of a country. And that is someone that you can only wish to have the determination of this country and the challenges that it has had. AJ or Fernando, you guys want to comment on that last sound bit that I played?
I'll let AJ go first.
Yeah, I mean, you just have to compare Liz Truss, for example. I mean, every time Liz Truss comes on stage, it's almost embarrassing, to be honest. And yeah, I just wish we had like very, very stronger leaders, like the great leaders of the world. I mean, even like Putin and even Xi Jinping, and even there's other strong leaders around as well. But I think you as a leader, you got to lead from the front, and your people must have confidence in you. And this is one of the things that Liz Truss did not have. Nobody had any confidence in her. The media did not. The people did not. The markets did not. The stocks did not. This is why she had to go. And yeah, there is definitely a big problem here with the way the Western democracies are being run, the way Western leaders are being picked, compared to what it is in China, for example, or in Russia or other countries. And I think Western countries are quite scared. They don't want to show how successful the system is in China, for example, and this is why
Mm-mm.
the West keeps, screaming about democracy, democracy. Our system is better than yours, but they are scared. They do not want China to succeed for that particular reason. They do not want a strong leader. They do not want China to succeed, because if that happens, then America's democracy around the world will just disappear. All the other countries will start following the Chinese model, and America does not want that, because one of the reasons America is having this major hegemony around the world is because of democracy. And one thing you can do with democracy, you can, if you don't like a leader, for example, if you have a country where you don't like the leader, and as an American, all you have to do is put all of your backing and all of your money onto the next
Mhm.
next leader after 4 years, and this leader, will come into power, and he'll be your puppet. And this is what democracy brings to the United States. It gives them a lot of leeway, it gives them power, and if they don't like a leader, they can easily dispose of him and get him another leader. And they'll mess around with the votes, and they'll find a way for that leader to get into power one way or other. But the problem with Chinese system, or even the Russian system, you cannot change the leadership that easily, and this is what's scaring the United States and the rest of the West, because they cannot change Xi Jinping, they cannot change Putin, and it really scares them, because they you know they have no influence over that country. Means this is why they are pushing for democracy around the world. And as China succeeds, as China becomes more and more powerful economically, militarily, I see a lot more countries changing to that system, and that is a huge danger to the Americans and the West, because they are going to be losing their control over the rest of the world.
Having added to that, I would say that other ways that they get people out of the positions are using I'll give you an example. They use the authorities in the United States to get somebody charged with an offense, or allegedly a whistleblower will call on someone or call out someone. Then the next thing you know, they're held in front of the Senate or Congress to answer. And if they don't get them on a technicality, they'll say, well, there's an interesting word that most of the viewers should really double underline in the dictionary. It's called conspiracy. And if you see a lot of the laws where a lot of people are charged, it's conspiracy to commit fraud, or conspiracy to money launder, or conspiracy to securities fraud. This word conspiracy basically means, well, we feel they had the intent. They didn't go through with it, but the intent was there. And some of these penalties come with a sentence of 20 years in prison. I'm not kidding you. So if you hear somebody that has been conspired or conspiring to commit mail fraud is, like maybe somebody bounces a check or sends it in the mail or something like that. Our Americans, you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. I don't need to sugarcoat this. Some of those laws are designed, and they are used, and the Department of Justice in the United States is used wrongly. The FBI is used wrongly. It is not hard to actually break the law in the United States. It's not hard. And it's incredibly easy, and that's why it's one of the most incarcerated countries on this globe. Gentlemen.
I wanted to mention something. Alex, I just sent you a text. I don't know if you could post it in the comments on the side. It's something in Chinese. This means 全面开放. This was something that was a very important. It means to be open. China had, as part of its strategy, to open to the world. That is no longer part of China's strategy. That text has disappeared from the strategy, the plan, the moving forward in China. That is a very big indication. Even though Xi Jinping is saying, hey, friends of the media, please tour China, China is realizing that the world out there is nuts. The world is going in a way that they do not want to follow. So If the coupling is what we need to do, that's what they'll need to do. If dictating the rules by which you can do business in China is not pleasant and it's not, it doesn't favor Western investment, you guys can go. We don't need you. Think about this. This is one thing that I was discussing with Mario. I don't know if you guys have shared this thought before, but on behalf of Mario, I'll share it here. This is his own thought. If foreign companies are fed up with China's policy of COVID, for example, or something that I'm going to talk about in a second, a lot of monetary changes, but that's in a second. So stay there. Don't go anywhere. If companies are fed up with China, they're free to go. And that is not going to affect China so much, because the days of China needing engineers, technology, scientists are gone. Today, China is at the forefront of technology. What has happened with this CHIP Act? About, if I'm not mistaken, please correct me, 1,400 scientists and researchers that were in the United States have come back to China. There's a repatriation of extremely smart people coming back to China. They can replace any enterprise that wishes to leave China because of COVID or because of this or because of that. So the significance of this particular set of words, the Qianman Kaifang, no longer being part of China's strategy, is extremely important. It's going to be, okay, you guys want to do you, we're going to do us. I don't know if you guys were aware of this, or how do you read this, AJ, from a British perspective? The fact that China is no longer open to please foreigners anymore, foreign markets or foreign governments. You do you. What do you
Yeah,
reckon?
I think the West has got itself to blame here, and China has been very, very careful, slowly opening up over the years, and they've seen what happened to Russia. I think back in the day when you had Soros absolutely destroying the Russian economy, stealing all of the raw materials, stealing the oil, privatizing gas and oil, absolutely destroyed the Russian economy, stole so much money from Russia, and people like Soros became billionaires, as you know. So they look at that. They look at how the United States loves to go into all of these countries, steal their minerals, their wealth, and privatize all of these industries. Uh, and they just steal the wealth. And this is how the West has been making money. And this is like a modern day imperialism, you can say, rather than, controlling the country, sending your troops there. What America or the West do, they put a couple of military bases there, and I'm talking about Germany as well. There's about 70,000 American troops there, and what they do, they privatize a lot of the sectors. You're talking about oil and gas, mining. They privatize them. Um, Bringing in a lot of American companies, and this is a modern day, imperialism. But however, all of this has changed. And I read a book recently, and it's a really interesting book. I can't remember who wrote it, but I'll try and find the kind of details. And it basically talks about how the West has been taking advantage of Russia, of cheap energy, and also from China in terms of cheap products. And this is how the West has been keeping its inflation down. So you see, in the 1950s and 60s, when America had a huge industrial base and UK had one as well, back then things were cheap, wages were cheap, everything was cheap. Then suddenly, house prices started rising, inflation started rising, and there came a time when they could not increase their wages, and wages have been stagnant for the last 10 years. They cannot increase the wages, because if they start increasing the wages, companies are not going to make much money. So what do companies do, or what did they did? They went to China, where labor was cheap, materials was cheap, properties were cheap, and this is how the West has been keeping its inflation down over the years. They've moved into China, allowed China to produce, be a factory of the world and produce products at a really, really cheap price. And the American public and the Western public, especially the Europeans, have been loving the fact that, they've been having cheap products all these years. Inflation has been kept low. And America has been obviously printing its dollar, keeping that as world reserve currency as well. But now things are changing. Things are changing in China, and China has been looking at what's happening around the world. Obviously, you've got the trade war with the United States, which Trump started, and China is also, very, very skeptical about opening up. And they were slowly opening up, but now it looks like they are slowly closing down. And you can see the results. There's less and less. Obviously, less and less people going into China, but they have been closed. But there's also less students going into the West to study as well, because they don't need to. They have everything they need at home. In terms of technology, businesses are moving out of China, but this is only because China is closed. That has been closed for the past couple of years for COVID. But I guarantee you, when China is open again, these businesses have no choice but to come back to China. And the businesses who do have a brain, and I'm talking about German companies like BASF. BASF have built a huge plant in China now, and this plant produces things that the world need. I'm talking about fertilizer, I'm talking about chemicals that the world needs. And you got BMW, who's moving its plant from the UK all the way to China. You got Volkswagen, doing more joint ventures in China. And I don't care what people say about China's this, China that, but at the end of the day, businesses, if you want to make money, if you want to keep your products cheap, you have to go to China. And it's not, what does China have that the West hasn't? Obviously, you have the cheap labor, and you've got to look at the inflation. I think it's about 2.5%, and compare that to the West, at the moment it's 10% officially government figures, but the real figures everybody knows is more than like 30-40%, because the government do not want to give out the real figures, otherwise people will start panicking. So what you have here in China, you have obviously huge supply chains. China controls 80-90% of the supply chains around the world. So you have access to raw materials. China has the BRI, and it has the shipping lanes and train lines going all the way to the rest of the world as well. And also China has a huge amounts of renewables. So when you open a factory in China, you are guaranteed to have power. I mean, look at what Europe is at the moment. Without any gas, they are deindustrializing. But China has got, power coming out from renewables, hydro, solar, wind, nuclear. Their nuclear facilities will double by 2050. Solar, wind will triple, even quadruple. They have hydro plants coming online all the time. They have gas pipelines coming from Russia, 2 or 3 gas pipelines coming in, Siberia 1, Siberia 2. So they have a huge amounts of energy coming into China. So if you want to move your factories to another part of the world, what other country is going to provide you with all of these stuff? Or people say India, but India, if you look at the map where India is right in the middle of 2 major choke points. India doesn't have the BRI like China does, so it can't really transport anything by train. So only option he has is by ship.
It would
So
take forever.
and you're stuck. If you go one direction, you're stuck in the Malacca Strait for weeks. If you go the other direction, you're stuck in the Suez Canal for weeks. So you cannot. And look at the petrol prices and the gas prices. Gas prices are here to stay. So if you're going to transport anything from India, it's going to cost you thousands, plus, it's going to take you a long time. Plus, India doesn't have the renewables. I mean, right now people say India, but every time COP26, COP27, COP28 comes up, everyone's going to be pointing fingers at India, saying, "Oh, you're burning too many coal power stations. You are polluting the world." And there's going to come a time within the next maybe 5 years when the global warming hits 2%. This is when they're going to really clamp down on countries such as India. They're going to say, "You know what? we don't want you to burn any more coal power plants. But China is already ready. I mean, you've seen the amount of renewables and things that China is doing. So China's already ready for that, 2030, 2035. But once the world hits that 2% figure in terms of temperature rises, countries like India will have to cut down their factory usage, and that's going to be a major problem. Also, India, there's other problems as well. There's drought, and there's they don't have the space as well. I mean, India is 1/3 of the size of China. I mean, they have a huge population at the moment, and they said, okay, there's other places like Mexico, and there's no other place around the world that can provide you everything that you need compared to China. So all these companies, I saw some results yesterday. All of these companies that have been moving out of China for the past 2-3 years. I mean, this has come from Trump's trade war, and 80-90% of the companies moved out of China. Now they are moving back into China, and these are figures you can see. And foreign direct investment is increasing year on year in China. So you're right, China doesn't care because they know that their economy is moving up. They know the inflation is down. In terms of having a business, it's a great place to have business in China. But one thing a lot of people don't understand is if you set up your business in China, look at the market. You have 1.4, 1.5 billion people in China. So look at that market. You as a business, you will go from an average business into a world-class business if you have access to that market. So which business does not want that? So these businesses that say they want decouple from China or they're moving out of China, I mean, they must be run by a bunch of idiots, because nobody when they're in their right mind will say no to money, right? I mean, everybody wants to make money. Business want to make money. So if a CEO says, oh, I don't want to make money in China, let's go and open a factory in the United States. I mean, how stupid and ridiculous is that? Eventually reality hits in. Same way reality is hitting the European leaders, the same way reality hitting the European markets, and they are seeing that not having access to cheap energy from Russia, they have underestimated the impacts of that, and now they are seeing the results. They are deindustrializing, and a lot of companies are actually going to be moving to China because they have no choice. They cannot run a company in Europe anymore. People say they're moving factories to United States, but it makes no sense to moving to United States. If you move to United States, everything's expensive, labor is expensive, raw materials is expensive. You're not going to be competitive with the rest of the world. So as a business, it makes sense to move to China. And in terms of Britain, I mean, we have been deindustrializing since Brexit. I mean, I was looking at the bankruptcy figures. Bankruptcy figures have just gone through the roof. The companies who were Brexit trading, most of them have stopped trading with Brexit, and some of them are reduced trading with the European companies. But most of them, actually 90% of them, have actually moved their headquarters to Europe. This means that UK will make less money from tax, and if you're a company, I mean, look at where Britain is compared to Europe. Like, this is like having the island of Taiwan with China. You cannot decouple from each other because of the distance. I mean, think about the oil and gas prices. If you're going to decouple from your neighbor and start selling to somebody halfway around the world, it doesn't make any economic sense, because you're not going to make any profit. In fact, you're going to make a loss. And this is like me having a trade deal with my neighbor. All I have to do is go across the fence and sell to him and buy to him. And if one day I decided not to trade with him anymore, and I decided to trade with somebody in Australia, I have to go to the airport. I have to go fly across all the way to Australia, sell him the same product, come back. It doesn't make any sense, right? This is exactly what the UK has been doing with Brexit. And yeah, we have been deindustrializing. There's companies are moving out. For example, the latest is BMW has been moving out of UK factories and moving their factories to China. And I used to work in a company as well, a major company, and they have recently moved their offices to Netherlands as well. Companies are moving out, and UK is in a really, really bad situation. And to make matters worse, the markets have rejected UK. They are also kicking out all Chinese investments. Anytime a Chinese investment wants to invest in the UK, all these dumb politicians are standing up saying, "Oh no, we can't have the Chinese investing our industry," blah blah blah. And what did and then suddenly Chinese, Britain is not an attractive place to do Chinese business anymore, and so many Chinese businesses are just now moving out. There's no point investing in UK. I mean, look at Huawei. Huawei is a big example. Since how UK has treated Huawei, no major Chinese business will come to UK. It's a big risk. You come to UK, you want to invest money, but then you get kicked out, depending on whichever politician decides to kind of kick out that company. So no Chinese company is going to invest here. And this is why the government bonds in UK, nobody's buying it because they're worthless. No country will buy it. United States is not going to buy it. China's not going to buy it. It's absolutely worthless. And this is why the bond prices and the yield prices are going up. Bond prices are going down. Sorry, I'm talking a lot. I've got a lot to say, but yeah, over to you guys.
I wanted to I wanted to say one thing to perhaps expand on what AJ said. Not necessarily contradict AJ, but people like to think or talk of China and cheap labor. Cheap labor was what China had to offer in 1979 during the reform and opening up. Cheap labor is what China had to offer until the early 2000s. That's when China was growing at double digits. But for the last few years, that has slowed down. The GDP growth has slowed down. And a lot of people say, like, oh, you see, China is about to collapse. China is going to be in trouble. What they don't realize, it's what has actually taken place. That GDP is no longer tighter connected to cheap labor, to a vast population that needs employment, that would work for food and shelter. Right now, a great part of that GDP is based on research and development, innovation, AI, inventions, all these technology that is out there in the world markets that is created, manufactured, and sold in China and from China. This affects greatly the kind of GDP that we're talking about. It might be smaller, but it's a GDP that is a lot harder to replace. You cannot replace the research and development. You cannot replace the technology. You cannot replace the innovation that is being produced in China very easily. Cheap labor? Yes, sure. Go to Bangladesh, go to India. That's cheap labor, no problem. China is not that interested in that. Another repercussion of that, AJ, is caring for the environment, which is something that was very important during this 20th, to get back to China and to what we're discussing here. The work that China has done in protecting the environment in terms of afforestation, reforestation, people haven't begun to hear about this whole, I forgot the technical term, but this water redirecting projects, bringing waters from areas with lots of water and lots of floods into areas that have a lot of drought. These are huge, enormous engineering projects designed to protect the environment. And as things would do, you change the kind of GDP that you are concerned with into more knowledge intensive, you're polluting a lot less. You don't have too many issues with air pollution, water pollution, soil pollution. So these things go hand in hand, but few people see them. So that's what I wanted to say to our audience, and remind AJ that the idea of cheap labor, it's an old idea. Technology is coming from China. Innovation is coming from China. New advances and new discoveries are coming from China. China now is competing with supercomputers, is competing with manufacturing of nanochips and microchips, and I mean,
Yeah.
I
I
have
completely
something
agree
else
with
to
you.
say, but I'll get back to you. I'll get back to
Sure.
you
Yeah, I
with that.
completely agree with you. But if you look at the cost per capita, still United States is still one of the top places for wage, and cost per capita is still very low in China. There are other countries which are lower, but like you said, China provides so much more advantages compared to just having cheap labor. It provides
Yeah.
everything that I mentioned, like the supply chains, access to raw materials, technology, you know, everything. So in terms of having value for money, having something, if you want to create a product in the most effective way possible with the most value for money, China is the best place. Because if you do it
Hmm.
somewhere else, you might have cheap labor, but you might not have access to the technology, you might not have access to the raw materials, you might not have access to the
Yeah.
power, or oil or gas, other things. But yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
it's still, I think United States is still 5 times more in terms of wage per capita compared to China. So China's wages are still rising. But yeah, over to you, over to you, back to you.
Let
Sorry.
let me let me let. I'll
Alex.
go ahead, Fernando. Please go ahead.
No, go, because mine is
No, no.
long. So go.
Well, let's break down that those levels of income for a moment. And I was waiting for Fernando to add his comment on the cheap labor comment. Let's do a breakdown of taxable rates compared to taxable rates in China compared to taxable rates in the United States. For example, if you earn X salary in the United States, what is the taxable income over, let's say, if you earn over $20,000 or $30,000, and you compare that to the Chinese tax rate? First of all, they don't say that in the numbers. So it's been very apparent to me that the taxable rates here are very generous compared to Canada, for example. I'm going to use the Canadian tax level compared to Chinese tax levels. Dramatically different. Okay, so that's personal income. Then it's as soon as you walk out the door of your office in Canada. And here's where it gets interesting. So let's say an individual has X amount of dollars. Let's call it $100, or let's call it $1. Okay, $1. He walks out of the office at $1, and he probably pays about 30 cents on that dollar. So as soon as he leaves the office, he has 70 cents left. Of that 70 cents, he wants to buy gasoline or fuel or for something for his car, which could be taxed at whether it's a goods and services tax, provincial sales tax, or federal tax, sales tax as well. So it could go from anywhere from 14 to 21%. If he drinks alcohol, it could go up to 28%. If he smokes cigarettes, it could go up to 30 to 35 to even 40%. Okay. Then this fellow gets back to his house and he parks his car that he pays tax on, that depreciates, and he pays tax on the property that he's parking that car. It's called property tax in Canada. For I think it's somewhere, depending on what region you live in Canada, I would say a $300,000 to $400,000 house is probably about $6,000 to $8,000 in tax a year. Now, that's not 6,000 to 8,000 property tax. That's more like 12,000 to 13,000 because you have to earn 12 to 13 to pay for 8. So once all that tax is done, then you're going out and you're consuming, you're buying things. You're buying an Apple iPhone, for example. Well, in that Apple iPhone, 1 in every 5 phones in Canada are owned by the government. How do I come up with that number? A 20% tax rate. Well, 5 times 2, right? There you go, is 10, or 5 times 20 is 100% or 100 cents. So you break that down that every 5th iPhone is basically given to the government. So as you break down those rates, you get on the transportation. Well, the transportation has a tax because it's included in your municipal tax that you also have to pay in Canada. So whether it's federal income tax, provincial sales tax, provincial income tax, property tax, luxury tax if your house is over $500,000, and the taxes go on and on. So at the end of the day, what is left of that actual dollar to purchase? Okay, now that is one example I'm going to give you compared to China. I can walk out that door and I can make a choice. Do I drive a bike that costs me $2 a month to charge, Or am I, because I have other choices here. I can get on a monorail. I can get on a subway. I can get on a bus system because the government has invested in that systems, those logistical systems, those transportation systems to get me to work. For example, I can take a subway. The cost of the subway, 70 cents. Cost of a subway, or probably the tube in London's probably about $11 or $12. I don't know. I'm guessing. So you take all those major things out of that purchasing power, we'll call it, in the United States or Canada or United Kingdom, and you start breaking down these things and you say, wait a minute, a dollar isn't a dollar, or a pound isn't a pound in your country. It's 30p. Well, here, you're not hit with these. You're hit with them in a smaller way, but then again, you're not worried about massive train strikes. You're not worried about power outages. You're not worried about safety. You don't have to buy massive insurance policies because you're concerned your car's going to get broken into. In my last year in Canada, my car was broken into 3 times, my home twice. And I had a car that was set on fire in the last year there when I was 25 years old. Now, these are life-changing events for some people, but that's just the, and I lived in a pretty damn great neighborhood in downtown Vancouver. It was fantastic. But where I'm going with this is that it's almost impossible for us to compare a dollar for dollar to another country, because the infrastructure, the lifestyle choices are much different here. If I said to you, AJ, you could get on a beautiful high-speed train that would go 320 kilometers and get all the way from Manchester to London and cost you 22 quid or 20 pounds or 18 pounds. Is that a bargain?
Of course, yeah. I mean, right now it's 180 pounds.
So there's an example of, you can say, wait a minute, do I need to live downtown London or the city of London to work in finance? Or is the infrastructure giving me that opportunity to live, farther away, but I can get to work for much cheaper? So these are all the choices that, especially in a city like Chongqing here, okay, 32 million people, huge city, but the infrastructure is here for the people. You want to drive a car? You can drive a car, no problem. You want to drive an e-bike? You can drive an e-bike, no problem. You want to get on a subway? Yep, take subway. Well, okay. The city consistently invests in it. 14,000 bridges in this municipality, and I mean a 95 mile long monorail blowing through the city, all zigzagging all over the place. These are choices that Chinese people have. So, do they live a better life, guys? I have to tell you that they're not concerned about, if I broke my arm or if I got into a car accident, is my medical insurance going to cover me? Is that a life-changing event where I have to claim bankruptcy because I got into a car accident and I can't pay the $225,000 medical bill? So these are all these major stresses, and people keep saying, well, it's cheaper and it's cheap labor in China. They don't earn enough. Well, I got to tell you, from what I've seen in the last year living in this city, a lot of people are living a hell of a lot better life due to the government's, what the government has done for its people here. It's impossible to prove or impossible to show. And that's why, she is saying, come on in, invite the media, come in, see these cities.
Exactly. It's the cost of living. The cost of living in the West is through the roof, Alex. I mean, people are living paycheck to paycheck. And if you lose your job, that's it. 2 months later, you lose your home. 2 months later, your kids are starving. So it's a big problem. It's a big problem in UK and the West. The cost of living is just through the roof.
One more thing, and then I'm handing it over to you two again to go for it. The question that you were posing, talking about, can companies survive without China? That's an interesting point when you're using the companies' examples from the United Kingdom or United States, saying they need to do business with China. It's not just an import-export way of looking at it. And I agree with you on the point that logistical lines here and buying things in China can relatively be good from a a quality standpoint. People say, "Oh, it's cheap Chinese goods." No, the only reason a good is cheap is because the buyer has requested such a cheap price that the supplier has to meet those demands. That's one of them. Okay, China can make a beautiful mobile phone for iPhone and for the Apple team, or it can make a $20 smartphone. It's just whatever specs they want. But here's something that I think that we've all missed is that if you look at the Standard & Poor S&P 500 companies here, look at their balance sheets, and look right behind me here on the streets of Chongqing are American companies selling their products to Chinese, because the consumer is here now for them. The consumer is here for the Starbucks. The consumer here is for Levi jeans, whatever you want. In those shopping malls behind me, the 3 that just opened up last year, America sells their apparel, sells their goods, sells their coffees, sells their branded goods all over the place. So not necessarily is it about exporting all the way over to the other side of the world there. It's important now that America knows that their market's here. They know it. It's here. Starbucks knows a huge amount of Starbucks bottom line is in China. And that's why this is a country that they cannot cancel like they did in Russia. Guys, I'm going to hand it over to you. I had an AJ moment.
I just wanted to share something with you. This is a surgery that I had, my hand surgery, just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, we had a clear one. Yeah. How much?
700 RMB. 700 RMB with tests and medicines and all these things. And okay, I don't know, it's not focusing very well. And they actually wanted to take a selfie with me, like, oh, let's take a photo because there's a foreigner coming here to get a surgery.
Sure.
There you go. Look, I wanted to talk about something that tea leaves. You want to try and see what do they mean. They announced the members of the leadership of the government, the 7 people, right? But there were some people that actually stepped out, and that's interesting. So let me get my information because I don't want to mispronounce their names. But first, the governor of the Bank of China, he was removed. The head of the Banking and Insurance Regulatory Services, his name is Guo Xuqing. He also stepped down. The monetary reformist, a man called Wang Yang, was also stepping down, and an economist reformist, Li Keqiang. They're still part of government, but they're not in leadership. What you need to start thinking is these are all people related to monetary policy, the economy. What does that tell you? There's going to be a shift in the way money is handled in China, and the economy is going to be pushed and driven here in China. Is that related also to the let's not open completely to the West and satisfy whatever needs they have? I think that that's where it's going to. It's going towards building a stronger currency that can be traded internationally. I mean, Russia has set the example. You want my gas, you want my oil, pay me in rubles.
Yep.
Well, imagine for a second. I mean, we've heard also that China has been dumping its US dollar reserves. It's the lowest it's ever been. China's not buying bonds. China's not buying any that America is selling in terms of financial aid or support. So there are big changes taken from a monetary standpoint that I think is worth keeping a close eye on. New people are coming in with different ideas, probably more in line with Xi Jinping's new program, new plan. One more thing that I want to say, and I want to drive us in that direction, is a lot of people get confused when they hear socialism with Chinese characteristics. So for the audience out there, I would like to explain this to you. It's very simple. implementing socialism and doing socialism requires to adjust the measures that they take to 1.4 billion people. They need to address the needs and the desires and the characteristics, the the weaknesses and the strengths of so many communities in the country. So it's not socialism that works for any other country. It's for their own issues and their own problems and their own diversity in terms of ethnicities, in terms of culture, in terms of language, in terms of terrain. China is ginormous. So what works in the south does not work in the north. What works in the desert does not work in the jungle. So this is one of the things that he means when he says socialism with Chinese characteristics. But the most important thing is that capitalism does not rule all. That's the main difference.
Interesting.
Capitalism, it's all good and dandy. You can be a billionaire here, but you will not do things that go against the will of the people or the well-being of the people. Capitalism is not let loose. Capitalism is not all about shareholders and profits and growth. And no, you need, there are limits. The best example I can give you is the industry I was in. We've talked about this in the past. It was an industry that was rotten to the core, with Ponzi schemes, people making gazillions of billions of dollars sending their schools to IPOs, and that needed fixing. That needed fixing. And Xi Jinping just said, yeah, this is a dozens of billions of dollars size industry. Boom. Later. Everybody has to be non-profit. Just think about the determination and the power and the resolution, the resolve, excuse me, I used the wrong word, the resolve to kill an industry of that size just because it wasn't a real industry. It was just fake. It was just on paper. So yeah, that's socialism with Chinese characteristics. Capitalism does not dictate what the government does. They do what the government tells them. And again, if foreign companies are not happy, there's the door.
Right.
you
Right.
You can come here and make your millions.
Well, thank you for that, Fernando. I just want to address a couple of things here in the left-hand side on my screen. The comments are very thick. That's great. I'm really loving that people are interacting with each other. Now, I want to say something coming up in the future here. We will be bringing back the Let's Talk China show on Sunday, I believe. Not this Sunday, but Sunday will be one of the target days of the week that we bring it to you, the viewers. Now, the good news, here's the good news about the show. The good news about the show is there's going to be a way that some of the viewers can actually call into the show. And I do wish that some of the people that are very skeptical about China or have maybe a very difference of a massive difference of opinion will be invited to come into a conversation with either yours truly or some of the people that will be collaborating on the live stream. I do like that people spend time and energy in the comment side box, but some people, they need to get it out, whatever is angering them or whatever is upsetting them about China. I look forward to absolutely bringing these people onto the program to have a chat with them, to share what their differences are or what they clearly might not understand about China. So that is the beautiful thing. So all those people that would love to come on the show in the future, just let us know on the sidebar there that you would like me to put your name down there and identify you as a subscriber, and would love and would cherish to have you on a future program of Let's Talk China so that everyone can hear what you would like to say, and you can have a voice here too, not just us. AJ.
Yeah, so let's talk about capitalism. So we are reaching the end of capitalism in the West as we know it, and as you can see, money printing has gone crazy in United States, and United States is controlling the rest of the world in terms of the inflation, interest rates. So when the Fed increases the interest rates, the first thing that the UK does, they increase their interest rates, and European countries, they start increasing their interest rates. So everything is basically pegged on the dollar. So we are basically slaves when it comes to capitalism. We are slaves to the United States, what they do with their monetary policy. And if anyone has any doubt, you just have to look at when the Fed increases their interest rates, and you just have to look at your own country and see what you've done with your interest rates. And you'll see that you've done the same thing exactly at the same time. And this is what happens in UK. The problem is United States, the dollar is a world reserve currency, so they can do whatever the hell they want, and they can print as many dollars, and they can basically spread out the inflation towards the rest of the world, because that's what the reserve currency does. The problem with other countries is their own currencies goes down as a result of the dollar. So you have the pound, for example, going down against the dollar. And what does that mean? This means that your imports are going to be more expensive. Your energies like gas and oil is going to be more expensive. Goods you buy from United States are going to be more expensive. And most of the world is importing more than they are exporting. And you're talking about Europe, apart from Germany. But then you have to look at other countries such as Pakistan, Sri Lanka. These countries are literally being destroyed because of the high US dollar, because you need US dollars to buy energy, you need US dollars to buy gas, to buy oil. And if the US dollar is going up in value and your own currency is going down, you have to pay more. And this is why countries like Sri Lanka are becoming bankrupt. This is one of the main reasons. It's not because of they took loans out of China, and this is something that the West tries to paint. It's all down to the monetary policy. It's all down to the US dollar. And Fernando, I know what you said about how China is trying to get rid of the US dollar. It's not that easy as you think. The problem is, China still, the main trading partner is the US, and I think they earn around $1 trillion per year from the US in terms of trade, and they buy that in dollars. And so China is basically stuck with the dollars, but they have to keep a reserve of dollars. They need to keep a reserve because they need that dollar to buy energy, to buy oil, to buy gas. They need it to buy agricultural products. So they need that dollar. They cannot get rid of all these dollars. So they need to hold it in a central bank. And this is why they are still at risk. If anything happens, the United States can easily say, you know what, we're keeping this, like they've done to Russia. So it's not as easy as it sounds to get rid of the dollar. The only way they can get rid of it is basically to stop all trade with the United States, stop buying stuff in dollars, and also changing the petrodollar. And so this is why Saudi Arabia is the key. If they can persuade Saudi Arabia to sell energy in yuan, Chinese yuan, instead of the dollar, that will be a big help, because this means that they can get rid of the US dollars even more. They don't need US dollars to buy oil, for example, so they can just dump all of that. So they can use their own currency to buy oil rather than US dollar. So right now, as it stands, they are still in discussion. And the problem with Saudi Arabia is obviously they have been an ally of the United States for many years, and they have a lot of deals with the United States. The United States provide them with security and many other things as well. And obviously right now things are not going well between the current government in the United States and MBS, the leader of the Saudi Arabia. But things are changing. I think the United States are threatening Saudi Arabia with all sorts of actions and sanctions and stuff. But, things are very changing around the world. I think countries around the world are looking at their own currency, looking at how the United States and the dollar is destroying their own financial system. So all countries around the world are looking for new ways to be independent, and the times are changing, but it's not something that will happen overnight. This will take 10, 20 years, and this will also need an alternative way to pay for goods as well. So we need the Chinese yuan to rise up and become an alternative to the dollar. So we need that to happen, because right now it's just the dollar. The euro is pretty much crashed, so euro is pretty much worthless. So it's just the dollar at the moment. But things like this is going to take time. It's going to take 20 years, 10, 20 years. But I think the digital currency that China is bringing up, I think this will be a big game changer. First of all, I heard that for a fact that these digital currencies will be used to pay for BRI, transport of goods between in the BRI, for example. These digital currencies will be used by many companies to go over like sanctions, like for example Iran and Russia can circumvent sanctions by using the digital currency. Plus you got 1.4 1.5 billion Chinese people using the digital currency as well, and that's going to increase the usage of the yuan globally as well. But this is going to take time. This is going to take at least another 10, 20 years. But I think we are reaching the end of the Western capitalism, and we are looking at a big change in the way the monetary policy moves around in the world.
I agree,
think-
AJ. It's going to need time. It's going to need time, but it's also going to need a new team, a new,
Right.
a rejuvenated team of people in charge of monetary and the economy and finances in China, and that's what we actually saw take place. That's what I wanted to bring it up. It's a significant change. It's a significant moving of chairs in China's leadership. Sorry, Alex.
No worries. I think that we've also have to look at, when you say digital currency, China's pretty much there already. And, by the usage of paying for things electronically, it's pretty much wiped out a lot of organized crime money. It's wiped out a lot of underground money laundering. You cannot walk into a bank with stacks of cash. No one walks around with cash here. I mean, it's so funny when you hear people, how digital paying digital on your phone, it's scary, you could lose your money. No, you can't. I mean, you have to understand that these phones here, okay, you want to pay for your taxi, it's here. You want to pay for your groceries, it's here. Hotel, it's here. Everything is here. Okay. You're not worried about bank cards falling out of your pockets, losing money, somebody hacking this, somebody hacking that. That has really cut a lot of, imagine this here, just for a second, AJ. Imagine tomorrow morning if the UK government said, okay, everybody has 2 weeks to bring all their cash in. 2 weeks to bring all their money in. Wow, you'd see a lot of cars being purchased, a lot of pieces of art being purchased, a lot of iPhones being purchased for cash, everything to get rid of that money. But it's, people might use the word reset, but it really has eliminated a lot of fraud. Fraud is massive, in other countries as well. But it has eliminated a lot of fraud here, and I haven't seen that happen much now. It happens other places around the world, credit card frauds, but I mean, I'm paying by, I have 3 methods of payments electronically on my mobile now. One last thing that I want to say about the strong currency in the US dollar, that's bad news. That's not bad news for America. That's bad news for the global financial markets, because what happens the last time that we seen the US dollar accelerate against Japan, accelerate against the yuan here in China, accelerate against the euro, accelerate against the UK, British pound, the Canadian dollar, New Zealand dollar, you name it, the list goes on. 2008 financial crisis hit like a lead balloon within 4 months after the US peaking out against other currencies around the world. Dark times are ahead in the financial markets. You're seeing mortgages being reset. An average blue-collar family, sometimes I'm hearing figures, once again, I'm using Canadian figures because I follow them, between $500 and $900 monthly payments go up when they renegotiate their mortgages now. I don't think we need to worry about that currency. I think you need to worry about the collective West's economies that are going to be torpedoed by, everyone's running to the dollar thinking it's safe. But you can see how fast that this can unravel. It
Yeah,
can
but
unravel
Alex,
fast.
the world has got no choice but to buy dollars, because you need dollars to buy, like I said, petrol, gas, products from the United States. So
But
countries
not if you
need
buy
that.
them from
No,
Russia.
not if you buy them
Not
from
if you buy
Russia.
them from Russia.
Yeah, but like, yeah, from Russia. But Russia has still not every country can go to Russia. I mean, Russia's still selling it to China and stuff, and stuff
Yeah,
like
but
that. But
Let me explain. BRICS is about to add another S, Saudi Arabia. So
yeah,
forget
yeah,
about paying in dollars for that kind of energy. Mm,
I do,
yeah. But
AJ,
it's
I
not
do see
happened
your
yet.
point.
They're talking about
I,
it. But also,
I do.
Alex,
sorry,
you mentioned the
1
digital
second.
stuff, but that digital stuff is
Yep.
actually using Alipay and stuff. It's not using digital yuan. I mean, that process is still ongoing. I don't think it's going to be
Okay, let
live
me
till
let me
2025 or something.
yeah, no, I know what you're talking about. You're talking about the
Yeah,
digital
because
currency here.
if you
But
pay by Alipay and stuff, the middleman like Alibaba, they get basically most of the profits. I mean, this is the same as
okay,
using Apple Pay and stuff like that.
let me try to be a little bit more clear here. When you set up payment plans here, whether it's WeChat Pay, Alipay, I think there's Bank of China, then there's Union Pay. When I'm using WeChat Pay, it's actually taking a direct debit out of my bank account, out of my personal bank account. It's not that I'm loading up WeChat, which I can do, but it takes it directly out of my bank account.
I
So in
understand, but
fact,
they still take transaction fees for doing that. So they will still take
but
a
AJ,
percentage.
I'm okay, and
Because
you
yeah,
let
because I
me
remember
let me
once there was Alipay were trying to do some sort of financing because of all that. They were turning into a bank, and I think the government clamped down on them because
yeah.
they were taking all the control out of the bank because of that.
I know what you're saying, but let me try to clarify a little bit more here, so
Sure.
we're a little bit more clear here. When you purchase something, whether it's a hotel room, you book a flight or whatever, you can pay, whether it's WeChat Pay. So to the consumer, first of all, there's no
Difference.
hidden costs. There's no cost there. Now let's talk about to the seller. Doesn't matter what country you're in. Doesn't matter where around in the world, you have to use a transaction method, whether it's Visa, MasterCard, American Express, okay? United States, that's the ticket of choice. You want to book a flight, rent a car, go anywhere in the United States, you have to use those payment plans. Now, Visa may charge the, we'll call it the retailer, anywhere from 2.2% to 5% for that transaction, and actually American Express even higher, okay? That is how the American system works, okay? In China, may very well be the same, that AliExpress or Alipay, WeChat Pay, all these payment providers are charging, but that is not going to move away from even when even when China brings in its digital currency. It's the transaction method. And that's why when you hear a lot of crypto guys say, well, hey, crypto's great. Well, wait a moment. I understand, cryptocurrency. I get cryptocurrency, but it's the ease of using cryptocurrency. Can you go out and today, and I know there's going to be a lot of guys on here on the sidebar talking about crypto now. I'm not against crypto. I think it's amazing. I think the blockchain is amazing. I think that's all amazing. I will convert some of my capital to cryptocurrencies the moment that I can walk out this door here and use it in any grocery store, any place to buy anything in the city here or in China. Great. Or around the world. Great. But right now, it's not at that level yet. So if we see 2 years from now that cryptocurrencies, it's easy to use them and the prices don't fluctuate, by the time you buy a car and get the transaction through, the price might change, $5,000. Who knows? But I'm just saying that I understand what China is doing, but with that digital currency, it's already here from the transactional point of view. And that means that it's here from a consumer standpoint. So I don't really feel that there's going to be too much of a difference on purchasing things here. It might be a different application, or it might be, something a little bit different. It might be allow you to buy things in a, more grandier way, instead of trading. But Fernando made a very good point about, the trading of oil and gas. And I mean, we have a perfect example here. Russia, a country of 140 million people, that had Visa, MasterCard, American Express, SWIFT cut off. Swift is huge, okay?
Yep.
And who jumped in?
Yep. SWIFT brought Switzerland's banks to its knees when the Department of Justice were doing investigations on tax fraud with Americans, 25,000 Americans. They said, we're going to pull the SWIFT on your banks. And they buckled. Switzerland, a country that is known for its security in banks and bank secrecy, they buckled overnight. Okay, here it is. Here's the people. Here you go. Take them away. Don't leave us with SWIFT. Yeah. Russia stood up. Russia said, fine, take it away. You're taking everything else away. Starbucks is gone. Every major automobile company is out of there. All the transactional companies, the Visa, MasterCard, American Express, Airbnb, all these countries, out. And guess what? The ruble was trading at year highs. The ruble, the economy, sure, a lot of businesses got hurt. But if we're talking about the petrodollar, is it that important now when a country that is a major supplier of oil and gas has managed, no problem, to work through this over the last 8 months? And for some reason, cash is getting to Russia and it ain't US dollars. So let's hear it from you, Matt. I love these types of conversations where we go back and forth. We're not always saying, I agree. This is beautiful. So convince me that the US dollar is going to continue to keep its place at the top there for world currency, because I'm not necessarily convinced on that now, because I used to think that, but wow. How on earth did Russia get through all this? It had to be difficult, but they made it through. They're through.
They made a very good decision in terms of selling oil and gas in rubles. So obviously that was the major kicker. So that managed to shore up their own currency rather than using other currency. And also China has helped as well. China has continued to buy Russian oil. India has as well. And, I think what the West wanted the whole world to stop buying Russian goods, but they failed. They forgot that the West is only the collective West. And I think there's a lot of arrogance in the West where they think that they can tell the world what to do and, expect the world to kind of listen to every command. It comes from the colonial days, I guess. But their strategy has completely failed. I mean, from day one, the West was saying, oh, the ruble is going to turn into rubble. Ursula was coming up saying, oh, we are going to destroy the Russian economy. It shows a lot of arrogance, also lack of understanding about how Russia works as a country, and also lack of understanding of finance and oil sector and gas sector.
We missed one thing is that they wanted to change as well. It's called regime change.
Yeah, that's right. They would love regime change in Russia, wouldn't they? They would love it. And I think this is why they love Gorbachev. And, remember when Gorbachev passed away, the whole West was, they're saying, oh, no, great leader passed away. But, they are actively asking for Putin's regime change. But it's not going to happen. But, you see stories in the West saying Putin's got cancer, he's going to die, he's got an illness. Then they do the same thing with President Xi Jinping as well. They said, oh, he's got illness, he's going to die. But, every one of their predictions has come false. Every one of the predictions has come false. And I think what Russia has done, kudos to them. First of all, the West has underestimated Russia. They thought Russia is just like a gas station masquerading as a country. They completely underestimated. And I think they've gone one sanction too far. The West has been getting away with sanctioning countries, for years. Venezuela, Cuba, Pakistan, many countries around the world, Sudan, a lot of African countries, they've been getting away with it for years, and nothing's happening to the Western economy. It's going on as normal. I forgot Iran as well. And they underestimated how Russian economy works. And this is the first time that they have sanctioned Russia, and these sanctions have completely boomeranged and hit them more than what happened to Russia. I think one of the things that Russia had done is they expected all of this. They had been preparing since 2014, since they took back Crimea, and the West placed lots of sanctions on Russia, and from then on, Putin had said, you know what, the West does not like us. The West is we're gonna have to be financially independent from the West, because these guys can destroy our economy just by using the sanctions. So what do we do? So Putin has been actually planning for this for 8 years since 2014, and he knew exactly how the Western leaders work. He knew they follow, like, they basically go around like clockwork, and they follow the same procedures: sanction this, sanction that. And he knew exactly what was going to happen, and he was pretty prepared. And this is why he took out a lot of the money from the central banks. He made sure he released the Mir card, which is replacing the MasterCard and places like and other things as well. He made sure that his ruble was strong enough. He didn't have many reserves of the US, and he was trying to be as independent as possible, not linked to the West. And I think this is what 8 years of work has done to Russia, and I think they've done a really, really good job in terms of their planning. But you're right, Alex. I mean, the dollar is not going to last for too long. I think we are witnessing the beginning of the end of the dollar. However, right now there is no other currency to replace the world reserve currency, and this is why countries around the world have got no choice but to buy the dollar. But if there was an alternative, if there was a Chinese yuan, or if there was a BRICS currency, for example, if there was a reserve BRICS currency, and the world will easily transfer to that. And I think I think pretty much most of the world cannot wait for that reserve currency to come into effect, like either the
I think
BRICS
what
currency or the yuan. Go on, sorry, Fernando.
I think that what we're failing to see, or what we should remember and consider, is that what the world is pushing is not for a replacement of the US dollar, is
Mhm.
for freedom to trade in different currencies. That's the whole idea of
Yeah,
multipolarity.
alternative. Yeah,
Like,
alternative. Yeah.
exactly. So if the Russians want me to buy their oil in rubles, okay, I'll pay in rubles and I'll find the rubles. And if China wants me to pay in renminbi, then go find the renminbi and then you'll buy. So it's not just a one single currency that needs to be used. It's not one currency that is going to substitute another currency. Is the freedom for countries to exercise their sovereignty and decide what do they want to buy from whom and who those people want to be paid. That's one thing that I think is in the process of getting resolved. It's not just one currency that is going to replace the US dollar. It will probably be three or four currencies that are going to take the burden of replacing a dollar that has no value whatsoever. It has nothing to stand on, and as we all can see. So the value of replacing the US dollar is in the freedom that is going to give to other countries. There's no sanctions. You cannot block me. You can. Countries will have the freedom to buy and sell freely to
Yeah.
whoever they want to.
Yeah, that's right. But right now, countries do not have the freedom. Like Saudi Arabia cannot sell to China using digital yuan because the United States will not let them. Look at Iraq, what happened to them when they decided to sell their oil with a different currency, and also same in Libya
Sure.
as well. You know,
Everything is depending on America going down.
yeah, exactly.
Everything is
So, I
depending on
mean, a
America
lot of
going down.
countries
So that's
do
what
not
the
have any
world is
choice
waiting
to
for.
move away from the dollar because they'll either get sanctioned or they'll get militarily attacked.
Yeah,
And
but
this is why the America
Let's
has
talk
got the
about something. Let's
yeah.
talk about something that I think is extremely crucial. And when we were doing the preparation, Alex, I mentioned it to you.
yeah.
And we talked about this earlier, but this just keeps coming. Number one, America, the U.S. Navy has told the world that they need to prepare for a war with China before the end of this year. I mean, what does that tell you? How do you react to that? We living in China. When we discussed Liz Truss saying, oh, we're going to make China a threat, the EU and this Ursula saying, oh, it's not enough to defeat Russia. We also need to go after China. When we have all these leaders of the Western world just setting their sights on China, and look, it's about to unravel.
Yeah.
What you're trying to say, AJ, is this is going to take time. No, this is going to take. I mean, imagine if the United States decides to go to war with China before the end of the year. Do you think they're not going to dump the US dollar? Do you think they're going to receive payments in US dollar? Do you think they're going to continue sending medicine to the United States? Do you think they're going to supply them with the rare earth minerals and the things that America needs? Do you think China is going to be friendly to America if they decide to go to war with China, if America decides to do that? And very important is that China is not pushing for this at all. China,
I don't think they will do
the
that
U.S.
this year.
Navy went ahead and said it in a press conference.
Yeah, well,
they went ahead and said it in a press conference.
But they physically they cannot go to war with China for many reasons. I mean, physically they cannot. First of all, they will lose. Secondly, the whole economy will crash.
Have nothing
the dollar
to
will
lose,
crash.
man. They have nothing to lose. The dollar is already crashed. I mean, just could you put that ticker of the foreign debt? There's no way 31 for them to repay that. There's no way for them to repay that ever.
They still have a lot to lose. I mean, look, the American public are still living a good life right now, and they see as China as an enemy. As soon as their lives start getting destroyed, and you look at Vietnam, the United States cannot have a long war. The people will eventually stand up, and this is why United States is scared of wars, because people usually stand up. Look what happened in the Korean War. Look what happened in the Vietnam War. The people stood up, said, we're not having this anymore. We need a change of government. We need a change of leader. We need to pull our troops
in the middle of an economic war. We are
economic
already
war, yes,
in the middle of an economic war.
I don't think the United States has got the capability of physical war. Economic war, yes, obviously.
A war with China will not be fought like it is fought in Russia. It's not people dying. This is going to be machines, equipment, jets, that kind of war. Who's going to come all the way to the shores of China? They're going to be sitting ducks.
Exactly.
They're going to be sitting ducks.
Yeah.
It's not going to be that kind of war, but we are already at the portal of a physical war starting, and that is only going to accelerate it's going to seal the fate of America.
I agree we're in an economic war. I mean, it started with the Trump era, when they started the Trump era trade wars, and obviously Biden carried it on. And you can see with the chip bill recently as well, this has obviously escalated.
When all these foreigners were demanded to stop working, they were demanded to stop working with any company or any research that had to do with China. Like, what? This is now affecting people's livelihoods to the extent that, remember what they did to the Japanese, the internment camps in America?
Yep. I mean,
we're getting close.
Let me chime in on this, guys.
Yeah.
Living in Monte Carlo for almost 20 years, I've pretty much seen how banking systems work and how connected and disconnected they can be. It used to be the run to the US dollar, which it is now, mostly in larger countries that are acquiring it, the dollar. Russia has just set an example that the dollar is no longer needed. It's not needed. And here is something I think a lot of people are missing, and we'll bring up the headlines in a moment here, but I want to show this to you guys here. The rare Swiss franc, okay? The Swiss franc is interesting. Let me just read this to you guys for a moment here. And we will, let's see, get that out of there. I'm just going to Okay, did that for you, Fernando. Okay.
Right.
Let me just read this to you guys for a minute here. Year end is always a stress point in financial markets as investors seek to build up a dollar cash buffers and collateralize minimal risk and exposure over liquid holiday periods. Well, the Swiss franc, this seems unusual because the Swiss franc is considered one of the safest, strongest, and most stable assets, even though Swiss franc cross-currency basis does not move in times of market stress. It usually does not less than its peers. Of course, this year has turned investors' assumptions upside down. That's to the biggest wave of inflation and borrowing costs in 40 years. The Swiss National Bank, the SNB, has even reversed years of massive franc selling intervention to wade into the currency market, buying francs. Europeans, they're going to the franc. Okay? Do you know how much Russian money is in Swiss banks? Lots of it.
Yep.
Okay. Now, the Americans have had their showdown with American client accounts in Switzerland. And yes, there has been some pressure on Swiss banks, but they ain't going to give this up. Hell no, they're not going to give this up. The US dollar, I get what you're saying, AJ, that it's the currency of choice. It doesn't matter how strong that dollar is and how many people have jumped into it. That ship is sinking. The financial markets, I'll give you an example. When we say, well, let's look at the financial markets or let's look at the U.S. economy, people are still relatively doing well. The bloody S&P index is off over 20% year to date. You know how much money in market cap that is?
Yep.
Lots and lots and lots. That spills over to hedge funds. Then it spills over to funds that are managed for pension funds. Pension funds are going to be window dressing, we'll call it here, at the end of November, hoping to have a decent number. But the moment that these hedge funds, I will call it, there's about a 90-day lag on hedge funds. Because when they sell it, you report quarter by quarter. Okay. And these hedge funds, a lot of them, our pension funds are trusting the hedge funds with their money. So what happens is we're not going to see it until probably the third quarter of derivatives expiring in December. And here's something for the audience here. And I want you guys to try to follow me on this because I've been an option trader for, almost 2 decades here. And this is a fact. This is a fact that the option market right now is saying to the financial market, we're willing to pay 15% for another 30% drop on the S&P market in 2 months. That is showing how scared a lot of people are. And in these derivative markets are the big boys, the Goldman Sachs, okay, the big boys, the big Wall Street boys, a lot of the big banks, city banks, you name it, they're all in on the derivative markets. If you think that they're stock market players, that's kindergarten to them. The big money is on the derivative markets, and all you got to go back is in 2008, the financial crisis, and see what brought down the world markets. It is the derivative markets, and this stuff is flying right now. All I can say is a third week in December expiration is almost paying 20 cents on the dollar, that there is a fear that this market could continue to drop another 30%. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, but people are willing to pay 20 cents on the dollar to protect it. That's right. That's how crazy it is. So does that mean that the U.S. currency is going to hold? AJ, I want to tell you, I have watched these markets fall many times in my life. And watching it fall on March 2020, and seeing that S&P index following almost 44% in a 6-week period, a lot of people got hurt. A lot of people didn't rebound. A lot of people didn't hold a market, hold their shares and watch them go down 44% and say, hey, you know what? It'll rebound. It'll go all the way back up. A lot of people sold. A lot of people needed that income. A lot of people had to sell that stock to pay that payment that maybe they didn't have a job. People were wiped out in 2020. 2022, we are seeing the extra inflated money leave the financial markets now. It's on its way out the doors. This is my opinion. Not telling people to buy or sell trade securities. I'm just putting that disclaimer out there. But from my standpoint, this is nothing that's about to happen in the I would say in the next 6 months. The truth is going to come, and
100%.
I don't think the U.S. dollar is going to be much. There's going to be much left of that dollar in 6 months. I think it's peaked out, topped out, and look out.
You're right, Alex. You're right, 100% right. But you have to compare the US dollar with the rest of the world, and the world who have I'm talking about the collective West, like Europe and British pound and Japan and South Korea. You just have to look at how they're doing compared to the dollar, and the dollar is taking them down with them. So first of all, the collective West is going to be taken down first, and then you have the poor countries who are reliant on dollar on buying energy and things like that. They will go down. But the problem is.
But AJ, before you carry on,
go on.
It's good that these economies are weakening their currency to the U.S. currency. That's a good part. It's the race to the bottom, my friend. It's not a race to the top. It's a race to the bottom.
For them as a country, because they still have to buy, raw materials like oil and gas. I mean, look at Sri Lanka. I mean, they cannot afford any oil and gas because their currency has gone so bad, and
but
the US dollar has gone up so high.
Sri Lankans don't have $650,000 mortgages either.
Yeah,
you know, in Thailand, do you know when COVID hit Thailand, what a lot of the Thais did? They went home. They left the big cities. They went back to their villages. They cut the chickens and they took care of each other through COVID, and the families took care of each other. The Thai families, the people that have the values, they just took care of themselves. They knew the storm was coming.
You've seen the images of Sri Lankans protesting, taking over the government buildings. So people are affected. Can't say.
Of course they're affected, AJ. Everybody is affected by this, but this is a race to the bottom. Yeah. And there's something that I learned about Thailand. It was truly extraordinary. I said to my wife, look out. This country's going closed for 2 years. Thailand closed down. Okay. It wasn't closed, a little bit of a soft closing. They shut everything down. I was there during COVID. Okay. They shut all the businesses down, all the fronts. You can see my videos from before. Everything was wiped out or about to be wiped out. And talking to the locals, I said, what are you guys going to do? Are you going to survive? I was trying to do what I could for my community there. And they said, you know what? We're going to go home. We're going to live the simple life for a while this blows over. Well, they can do that. And they did that. And they're still waiting for their economy to come back on stream. It's only been on, I think, 15% of what they've done for tourists. But how can you do that in America where everybody is so riddled with $31 trillion in debt, where homeowners own money, people own money is on their cars, student debt. Look out, man. And when the bottom goes to the top, it's gonna get nasty. And we've seen it happen. There's still communities in the United States that didn't survive after 2008. And this is what I'm saying is, it's not necessarily great to have a currency that's worth a lot of money because your exports aren't going to be doing that great. Okay. And imagine, hey, Russia breaks rank from selling oil in US dollars and says, wait a minute, US dollars pretty expensive for you guys to buy oil, right? Well, we can cut you a break. That's just my perspective on things, that anytime I see a US dollar skyrocketing, trouble is brewing, man. Just go look back at history. When that American dollar starts to spike, all hell is going to break loose here. And
but the thing is, this is going to be the worst spike in history.
Sure.
Because we are coming to the end of capitalism, and there's going to be a huge crash. We're talking about the Roman Empire collapsing, that kind of crash. 100% right. But it'll be interesting to see how things develop. But the countries who are independent from the dollar, countries like Russia, countries like China, they're the ones who will probably ride out the storm. Probably more Russia, to be honest, because
but isn't
China
that amazing?
Still has
I know I keep
China
cutting you
still
off
has a lot of dependencies on the dollar.
I keep cutting you off because I'm excited to get into this with you tonight because this is
Yeah.
great. No country should ever fear sanctions anymore because it doesn't work. It didn't work this time, guys.
Yeah.
They used to threaten sanctions. They used to say, we're going to sanction you into an oblivion and we're going to destroy your economy and regime change happen. There's a blueprint out there right now, and that blueprint is Russia. That's 140 million people that you've slammed with over 6,000 bloody sanctions on the country. Nothing. Let's go.
And guess what?
What else do you guys got?
Another country is Iran. I mean, Iran is now selling drones, suicide drones or kamikaze drones, as they call them, to Russia. And the West is going crazy. All of the West is saying, stop selling these drones to Russia. But first of all,
how about stop selling weapons to Ukraine?
Exactly. They have sanctioned Russia they have sanctioned Iran for more than, since the 1970s, as long as I can remember, really. And they have been making fun out of Iran's weapons. They said, we've been sanctioning them. They got no weapons. They got nothing. We can go into Iran anytime and destroy them and take over the country. Now, the whole of the West is shocked that Iran is able to produce these cheap drones, and they're bypassing all NATO. Ukraine, Kiev is covered with NATO anti-aircraft missile systems. They are completely bypassing them, and you have officers and police officers and army units trying to shoot down these drones with their machine guns. There's clips out there. It's absolutely crazy. And then the whole West, you see these drones all over the Western papers thinking, how the hell did Iran build these with all these sanctions we've placed on it? And it just goes to show, you place a sanction on a country, they will find a way to be independent. They will find a way to build their own economy, build their own manufacturing, and eventually they will come out better than they ever were. And this is...
And if they wanted and they needed, they will build it.
And AJ, they've managed to convince a country to bomb part of its own country.
Yeah.
Think about it for a moment. Okay? You have to think about the geopolitics between where the fighting is happening. Most of the fighting isn't happening, prior to the annexation of these areas, but it was Ukraine bombing Ukraine territory. The Donetsk People's Republic, that is one thing. That is another completely, and the Luhansk People's Republic, that these are territories that have been in dispute between the government of the Ukraine and these territories since 2014. There's been a Minsk agreement. This was signed. Those areas were supposed to have their own autonomy. That was signed. That was brokered by Hollande. That was brokered by Angela Merkel. Those people have signatures on real pieces of paper. Poroshenko's name's on it as well. Those were signed documents. But now what we do is we have the collective West funding a country that continued to blow up its own country. What I'm trying to say to you guys is there are territorial disputes on many countries around the world still today. Okay, there are breakaway parts. For example, Transnistria in Moldova. Okay, they have a territorial issue. Transnistria leans towards, the old Soviet Union. Moldova would love to be loved by the European Union, but nobody loves Moldova, unfortunately. And the European Union doesn't want to bring Moldova in there. But they have a territorial dispute, and that's called Transnistria. You can look it up on the map. I visited that region 4 times. I was there with Patrick Lancaster to try to understand in my brain, what does that mean if part of a territory just doesn't want to join this? And we have to understand that Moldova went to war over this, and they still haven't come up with a solution for it. The status quo is Transnistria was unrecognized. It continues to be unrecognized for over 2 decades right now. It has its own currency, its own passports, but they're not recognized by anybody at the moment. But at least Moldova has enough smarts to not blow up that region, because, in fact, there are families that are part of this entire country. And that's where, if you see what is happening in Ukraine, is the infrastructure starting back in 2014 was completely obliterated in the Donetsk People's Republic. They've destroyed and get this, guys. In that Minsk agreement, I don't know if any of you guys ever read it cover to cover. It's only 2 pages.
Yeah, I did.
Okay. In this document, and this says it all. I cannot believe that the collective West has not brought up this Minsk agreement that was agreed upon by 2 European leaders, agreed upon by the president of Ukraine, agreed upon by the Luhansk, the Donetsk People's Republic. In this agreement, it said, Ukraine, start giving people back the pensions that you cut off in 2014. Start giving back them the electricity that you cut off in 2014. Turn back the water on. Turn back the banking system on. Hello? If this was allegedly to Poroshenko part of his country, then why the hell did he shut all those things off? Why did he starve the people? Why did he continue to blow up their airports? And I'm not going to get into it from who's right or wrong. War is terrible. Conflicts are terrible. I don't like them. But hello, Europe, wake up, look at that agreement, try to understand what these people are going through. But what do? We seeing an American country and the NATO that are pumping another potential $50 billion into this next week. And what's that going to do? It's only going to continue to blow up the infrastructure of that country. There's going to be nothing left of it when it's over. I'm just baffled by this.
Yeah, I've read that Ursula has agreed to give 1.5 billion per month to Ukraine. She mentioned that yesterday.
Not enough.
I was reading Twitter, and first of all, people were saying, first of all, she's unelected. Why is she giving 1.5 billion, euros of European money without asking the European people? She's basically making these decisions, giving money out of her own accord without going for any votes or referendums. She's just doing whatever the hell she wants, and this money belongs. This money belongs to the Europeans, and it's just double standards, Alex. The fact that the collective West can send weapons, money to Ukraine, and they can do as much as they want, escalate things. But if Russia's allies send weapons to Russia, why can't they? Because they're allies, right? Iran is not the ally of the West. Iran is an ally of Russia. So if Russia wants help from its allies, why can't its allies help them? The West is going, no, Iran's helping Russia. We need to do something about Iran. And it's completely. Why is one country allowed to help Ukraine? As you got the whole of the West. You got the people sending billions and billions of money. You got everyone helping Ukraine, and they are completely forgetting about how Ukraine has been bombing Donetsk for the last 14 years or so, killing its own people. They don't care about that. They don't care about the Nazi problem. As long as the West is just completely brainwashed by it all. Common sense has gone out the window. Absolutely, nobody's actually standing up and saying, "Hang on a second, these guys are neo-Nazis. Why are they blowing up their own people for the last?"
Look,
10, 14
the
years.
geopolitical understanding that I have is Poroshenko did something really weird, which is to acknowledge on camera during an interview with Deutsche Welle that he had built NATO training centers inside Ukraine. Ukraine is not a country. There's a video out there. You can see it. Ukraine was not a NATO country. So that was like, what are you doing? But it's very clear to see when you go back to Ursula saying, like, look, Russia is not the issue. Russia was the appetizer. Basically, to debilitate Russia, to weaken Russia, makes it easier to conquer China, makes it easier to defeat China. They're natural allies. They share borders. They've had scuffles in the past, but they are, in essence, allies against these Western hegemonies that want to dominate them and overthrow their.
We lost the light. Don't worry about it. There we go. We're back.
Got a power cut.
Power cut,
No, my
Fernando.
dog keeps on my dog keeps on kicking the go away. So where was I?
Yes, go ahead.
The big picture is China, basically. The big picture is China.
Yeah, the big picture is China. That's what they're going after. And well, now that if Russia and China join forces together with Iran, there will be a bloc that is going to be extremely difficult to defeat. So the idea was, okay, let's start a scuffle, some kind of issue, even though they know that they're Nazis, even know that the Burisma is an issue, even they don't care about that. But let's just start a problem over there, so that we get Russia involved, so that we get Russia depleted, so that we get Russia some issues, so that they cannot support China when we go after them. Um, to what extent has that worked? Well, obviously, wars are expensive, and wars are the morale of the country suffers when you go to a war, with battles lost and territory lost, or ceded, or won. The morale changes all the time. So it was part of the strategy. I mean, it couldn't be any clearer than what Ursula said. It's not enough to defeat Russia. We
Mhm.
got to go after China. That was, I mean, sometimes these politicians, they say out loud what they shouldn't, what they're
Mm,
thinking, but they shouldn't. And now we just see this rhetoric spiking up and growing up. I was discussing with Harold in China, who left a
Mhm.
comment in our comment section. I already shared his contact with you. He's a
Thank you.
great observer, really great person. We were talking about um, the fact that the Rand Corporation said it in 2015. If we don't stop China by 2025, the military gap loss is going to be
Mm.
almost nothing. But there's another one that I wasn't able to verify, and I think if you're watching here, The Alchemist mentioned it a couple of times. There was
Mm.
another Rand paper that said, like, no, it has to be before 2024. And now we got the
Interesting.
Navy saying it's before the end of this year. I mean, I just see
It's already too late,
all this.
Fernando. It's already too
Yeah, it's
late.
already too late. But at the same time,
They
what
took
I'm
these
trying to say is,
years saying before this, before, but China is has gone beyond its capability, technological capability, and if there was any war tomorrow, most of these factories are owned by China will be immediately turned into military factories. They'll be churning out missiles and all sorts of equipment, overnight, literally, and it's gone too late. I mean, China has become so technologically advanced. They do not need the West for anything. They do not need it for materials, raw materials. They do not need it for gas and oil. They can get that from Russia. They do not need it for technological experiences, because China's already got that now. So they have all the tools they need to build a military industrial complex overnight
Yeah.
in an event of
if
wars. It's too
anyone
late.
if anyone is interested, sorry, I just wanted to plug
Yeah, go
something
on.
here. In early November, I will be covering the Zhuhai International Air Show, where there's all these military parades and whatnot. So I'll be heading down to Guangdong early in November, and I'll be doing some live streams from there with some friends from Guangdong TV. So keep an eye on that and follow me on Twitter as China Teacher
Sure.
One if you want to know about what China is doing in terms of military and defense that they show us, okay? Because what they don't show us way
I
more
mean,
advanced.
look at the Korean War. They completely underestimated China in the Korean War. They went all the way to the borders of China. They said, when China said, please do not go to our borders, they went all the way to the borders of China. And the West thought, oh, this is only China. What they can do, they got no weapons, no military, no airplanes. What the hell can they do? And look what happened in the Korean War. Completely underestimated China. And they're doing the same thing now. They're completely underestimating China now. They think, oh, 2025, 2024. I mean, a few years ago, they were saying that China could not do anything. I mean, only like 5 years ago, they said China's not innovative. China's got no military. China's trying to steal military technology from Ukraine. They've got no jet engine. They always
Yeah.
try and underestimate it. But when the reality is, there is no way they can win anything with China. I think one of the major things of the West, whether it's arrogance, they always like to underestimate their opponent, and they've been doing that for years. They underestimated
Mm.
Russia, and they've underestimated what the sanctions were done to Russia. And you're right.
This is
you're right,
Good point.
100% right.
Good point, AJ.
This is a huge
trying to-
difference
yeah,
in
go on.
government. This is a huge difference in government ages. Sorry. When you are a world power like the United States, when you are a hegemon, you don't, when you're a wolf, you don't care about the opinion of sheep. So the West has never been interested, America has never been interested in understanding China, in understanding its adversaries. They just sanction them, and just impose things on them. They just blackmail them. They just extort them. They've never taken the time to actually understand their enemies, because they've gotten away with anything they want. We just celebrated 11 years of Gaddafi's assassination. What was he doing? Just building a united Africa. So this is the problem with American Western countries. They think they can continue to impose their will around the world. But if you look at leaders in the global south, think just about China. And this is somebody that I wanted to show a photo of. This is a man that actually became part of leadership right now. His name is Wang Huning. He wrote a book called America Against America.
Do you
These
have the
are
picture, Fernando?
countries.
Do you have the-
I think I sent it to you on WeChat.
Let me
Wang
just have a
Huning.
look here.
It's
I'm
a
gonna
man
upload.
with black hair and glasses.
Okay, give me a
was
moment.
one
I'll
of the
bring that
7
up for you.
people.
Okay.
Sure. He basically worked in the United States. He lived in the United States. He traveled the United States. He studied the United States and wrote this book a few years ago called America Against America. This is something that leaders of other countries, Western countries, have never done. They have never understood the government of their opponents. China does. China understands them to a level that Westerners don't even begin to conceive, because they've never been concerned with that. Again, the wolf doesn't concern with the opinions of sheep. The thing is that these sheep outsmarted them and now understand everything they do and how they do, and they're just beating them at their game. They're no longer sheep. They're just another pack of wolves. Well, I don't know if that analogy is good, but what I'm trying to say is this has never been about understanding the opponents for a country like America. It's been, you do what I say, and that's what we call the rules-based order.
Yep.
If you don't, then sanctions. If you don't, we change your government. If you don't, then we invade you. If you don't, look what they're doing to Haiti. I mean, come on, man.
Yep.
Come on. It's just,
There's
that's
pictures of
America's way of doing
there's
things.
pictures of Haitians who are walking around with Russian flags and waving Russian flags, and I thought that was quite interesting. There's like
So
hundreds
the-
and thousands of them with Russian flags walking around the streets.
Yeah, you know,
The-
guys,
the-
I want to. Sorry, go ahead, Fernando. Finish up.
No, it's just
Yeah,
that the world is getting fed up with this kind of leaders that are bought and sponsored by corporations and military industrial complex companies that all they benefit is from war and fear. So they're looking for alternatives. So I just showed you a huge difference in governance, in government in West and China. I don't know. I think that when we were discussing the 20th and we got sidetracked a little bit, we forget that there is a huge element of democracy in China that people do not understand. People
Yeah.
think that there's no democracy here. And there's another picture that I wanted you to show. There's Mr. Tai Chi. He was also elected to the leadership. His story is one of true democracy. He joined the CPC in the mid 70s, and he worked together with Xi Jinping back in those days in Fuzhou, in Fujian. He then went on to become vice chairman of Fujian, and in 2014, if I'm not mistaken, he followed Xi Jinping to Beijing and became head of a newly opened office about security and governance, and then became the mayor of Beijing, and now he is one of the 7. But here's a very interesting story. Up until he moved to Beijing, he used to have a Weibo account. Listen to me. And his Weibo account used to be open to the public, and he used to resolve issues that were brought to him on Weibo. There's a very interesting story where a government official, his mom, wrote to him on Weibo, like, look, my son is forced to drink and smoke in some of these parties. This is early 2000s. So he said, like, tell me what department does your does your son work in? She tells him the name, and the next day, like, your son will no longer have to drink and smoke in those.
Mm.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's that granular, small attention to the needs and the worries and the concerns of the people. This is democracy at work. It's not just about universal suffrage. There's another picture that I wanted you to show.
Sure.
I sent you these two photos. The first one is a guy that does deliveries. He sends Kuai. Let me double check his name. Super interesting story. This guy, his name is Song Xuewen. He has done more than 300,000 deliveries. If you could show the photo, it would be great. Did you get it? Did you?
Yep.
I
Yeah, I can
think
see it.
that's it. JDL Express.
Okay.
Yep.
Yes. So this guy is a delivery guy. 300,000 deliveries. Okay. He has traveled on his e-bike 320,000 kilometers in 10 years. He's never had an accident. He's never had a complaint. And guess what?
Tell me.
Next photo. He has made it into one of the delegates of the 20th
Wow.
CPC National Congress.
There we go. There we
This
go.
is somebody from the grassroots that, because of his participation into society, into his community, and the solutions and the things, a guy that does delivery. Think of an Uber Eats. Think of a UPS guy going to Congress because of his participation, his suggestion, his ideas, his solutions, his work towards helping the people. And now you're telling me, oh, there's no democracy in China. Sorry, guys. I just wanted to.
No,
get back
it's
to the
it's
20th a
good.
little bit.
Just going on from that, the biggest democracy in the world is India, but you will never ever see anything like this happening in India, because it might be the biggest democracy there, but they have a huge class system there. So you will
Yes.
never have anyone from the grassroots going to this sort of heights in India, and they call it the biggest democracy in the world, but then again, it's not real democracy, is it? I mean, it's such a huge class system there. Certain workers will always stay certain workers. Certain people will always stay in that kind of field. They will never allow them to move up to another field.
There's something that I want to address to our viewers tonight, and wow, we got a great turnout going on here. I'm seeing the numbers backstage, and they're pretty spectacular with all the channels combined. This is amazing. America is an amazing country. I was born, of course, in Canada, and most, I think about 90% of the population in Canada live within 1 hour drive of the U.S. border. And I remember that country leading me into what I would call the American dream, right? And I would think any Canadian kid that was born in the 70s or 80s, even the 90s, had that American dream. Even though we were Canadian, we wanted that American dream. And this was a country that I looked up to. And in the recent years, it's been disappointing. I can imagine Americans that are watching this program today are disappointed in the direction that either a government has taken your country or what it is doing to your people. This is not the United States that I used to remember when I was, 10 or 15 or even 20 years old. Where I'm going with this now is we hear this term used a lot here in China where it says it's propaganda. It's propaganda. Well, as I got older in Canada, I started to notice that it wasn't China that was one of the largest countries in the world for propaganda. It was the United States of America. Now, everyone remembers, the space shuttles. Everyone remembers a country that calls the World Series, even though it takes place only in the United States.
International Space Station.
Everybody knows Hollywood, International Space Station. This is because America was amazing at propaganda, and they still are. They have managed to convince, maybe not our viewers, because some of our viewers definitely agree with what we're saying tonight. But I want to give you an example on how propaganda works, okay? I'm going to use this geopolitical issue going on with Ukraine and Russia right now. I want the viewers tonight to just check who Viktor Yanukovych is, okay? He was ousted in 2014 in Ukraine. Please go back and do the research on this. Why we are in the situation we are in today. I have a friend that means dear to my heart. I'm deeply worried about him. His name is Patrick Lancaster. He's a crowdfunded journalist that doesn't belong to any news agency. He's been telling this story since 2014, okay? His wife is from Donetsk, and his children were born in Donetsk. Viktor Yanukovych, get this, guys, he served as the governor of Donetsk region. I don't know if you guys are aware of that, but he was the governor of that region. Now, think about if your governor, your political mayor of your city became the president of a country. You'd be proud of him, right? If you're from Detroit, Michigan, or if you're from Sacramento, and all of a sudden that governor or that mayor, he became the president of the country, you would feel, wow, I'm proud. He stood up, he's there, he's representing me in the country. This is amazing. I am still waiting for someone to tell me when the election happened, when Viktor Yanukovych was thrown out of office, had to flee the country. Where did that election come from? That happened when he left as president. Oh, that's right. There wasn't one. But there was a government that was put in immediately, and some of the laws that they passed, banning the Russian language. So let me get this straight. The people of Luhansk and Donetsk were fearing for their lives, rightfully so. And to our viewers, I don't condone war. I don't like conflict. Both sides are losing at the expense of the collected West and this military industrial complex. Both sides are losing. Both sides are suffering. But all you have to do is do your research and see this started. Viktor Yanukovych thrown out of office. Now I'm going to bring you guys up to something that will prove my point 100%. There's no way to deviate away from what I'm about to show you guys.
They
As you
also
guys
banned oppositions as well.
Correct.
You know,
Correct.
They also banned
Yes.
so that's not real democracy. If you ban all of the
Correct.
oppositions, that means you're basically stand alone. Nobody can
Correct.
stand against you.
Absolutely correct, AJ. But this is where I'm going to show the viewers something they probably haven't seen or even taken the time to read and watch, okay? What is the Minsk Agreement? And you tell me, viewers, why would this be put in there, okay? And I'm going to read it quickly. It's a 12-point, basically breakdown. Ukraine and Russia backed separatists agreed to 12-point ceasefire deal, okay? Its provisions. This is 2014. This isn't February 2022. It's 2014, okay? Its provisions included prisoner exchange, deliveries of humanitarian aid, and the withdrawal of heavy weapons 5 months into the conflict that have killed more than 2,600 people, a toll the Ukrainian president Vladimir Zelensky says has since risen to 15,000. Interesting. In this agreement, representative from Russia, Ukraine, the OSCE, they always get their fingers in there, and the leaders of two pro-Russian separatist regions signed a 13-point agreement on February 2015. The leaders of France, I told you guys before, Hollande, Germany, Angela Merkel, Russia, Putin, in Ukraine, Poroshenko gathered in Minsk at the same time and issued a declaration of support for the deal. It set out a military political steps. Now, here's the important part, guys. Immediate ceasefire, understand, of course. Withdrawal of all heavy weapons, both sides. Yeah, we understand that, right? Let's keep moving. Monitoring and verification by the OSCE, no problem. Now, have a look at this. To start a dialogue, guys, to start a dialogue of the intern self-government of Donetsk and Luhansk region in accordance with the Ukrainian law and acknowledge their special status by parliamentary resolution. Right there. It's in writing, signed by the president of the Ukraine, signed by Vladimir Putin, signed by the Luhansk and Donetsk people. Number 5, a pardon of amnesty. Number 6, exchange of prisoners. Number 7, provision of humanitarian assistance for those areas. Now here, look at this. Fernando, can you see that?
Too small. Let me see it.
It says
resumption of socioeconomic ties, including pensions.
Yeah. Why were the pensions cut off? Why were the pensions cut off if Mr. Poroshenko, if this was part of your country? Why were the pensions shut off? I'm very curious to hear an answer for that. Restoration of full control of state border in the government and a withdrawal of all foreign armed formations, military equipment, and mercenaries. And constitutional reform of Ukraine, including decentralization with specific mention of Donetsk and Luhansk, and elections in Donetsk and Luhansk on terms to be agreed with their representatives. I rest my case on this one. That one right there just says it all, that agreement has said that, yep, they shut off the water, they shut off the electricity, they shut off the banking, they shut off the pension plans, people died, we signed the agreement, but guess what? It didn't happen. Fast forward February 2022, this world is in a mess. You have your answer right there, guys. It's very disturbing to actually have reading that. It's in plain English for anyone to see that this problem should have been put to bed back in 2014, but somebody reignited it in 2022 for some strange reason. Let's go to the headlines here, and let's get a little bit of help from our viewers, or pardon me, the guys that are on the panel with me today. AJ, this is the front page of the Daily Mail. Comments, tell us about that, and then we'll keep moving through the headlines, and both you guys can comment on it.
So obviously they have run out of candidates. So you have Èrshí Sunak, you have Boris Johnson, but you also have a young lady called Penny. Can't remember her surname, but you also have the Defense Secretary called Ben Wallace, and you have Jeremy Hunt, who is the current financial chancellor. And so you have these 5 candidates. However, the Tories do not want to take any more risks with new people. So that completely rules out Penny, Ben Wallace, and Hunt, because they will be taking a risk, because these are completely new people. So what they want to do is get Boris back and Èrshí back. The problem with Boris, nobody will stand for Boris to be a leader. And you can see when he landed in UK, people were booing. The fact that they've kicked him out, is a big problem for them. And the problem with Èrshí Sunak is Èrshí Sunak has been humiliated time and time again. And, and also the problem is, these 2 guys who have been instrumental in putting the economy how it is today in Britain. So people don't trust them. People think, oh, these guys are going to be going to destroy the country even more. I think what Britain needs is a completely new direction, a new people with new ideas, and very strong enough to say, hang on, guys, we need to reverse these ridiculous sanctions, and that would be a start. People like George Galloway, for example, but unfortunately we don't have anyone like George Galloway in the parliament. George Galloway was actually an MP back once upon a time, but he got hounded out, same way Jeremy Corbyn was hounded out. If you're any good and you speak the truth, you don't last in the British parliament, you get kicked out. You got to follow the line, and this is the problem we're having. We're going backwards. When you break up with the next girlfriend, and then you
that
got
was my tweet.
then you have no, then you go around, you go to bars and restaurants, you look for other girls, you can't find any other girls, then you end up going back to your ex-girlfriend again because you've got no
That
other
was my
choice.
tweet, man. That was my tweet. Like going back to
Yeah.
Boris is like
And
going back to the ex-girlfriend
yeah,
because the
but
one night
you know
stand
you've
gave
gone
you
to
syphilis.
all the bars, you've been trying your best to find other women, but you can't find other women, and then you just give up and think, you know what, I'm just gonna go back to Boris, and this is exactly
You
what's
reach
happening.
inside the pocket and there's nothing, and then all you find is like, oh, look at it, the fluffy hairy thing. Oh, well, I can do
Hilarious.
that.
Okay, well, we're moving on to the Wall Street Journal. Banks backing Musk are stuck with debt in a tighter market. There's the financial markets showing their true colors here for the Elon Musk deal there with Twitter. Sims is a Chinese mayor in Vancouver, Canada. I don't know if you guys are aware of that, but Vancouver brings in its first Chinese mayor. Congratulations, Mr. Sim. Fantastic to see you there. And we're going to continue forward, and we have the headlines out of Colombia.
El Universal.
Tell us, what does that mean, Fernando? We threw that
Well,
one in there for
look,
you.
this one, let me make it a little bit bigger. This, we are party people. It says from Sunday to Thursday, the schedule allowed for partying has been shortened.
Oh, my.
So
Why?
basically, you cannot party too hard, basically because of violence. We've had this in the past. Dollar is at a record high, is nonstop. And again, my country is going through a bit of change. One of the
Okay.
main things that is not here in the front page is that the government has agreed. It's the first time that we have a leftist government. So
Oh,
they
wow.
have agreed to buy land from cattle herders and people who grow, who have livestock, buy
Okay.
their land to implement a land reform in Colombia and give land to the poor people. Something never heard of, something that for a lot of people, we thought it was like this would never happen. Well, this is going to happen with this president in under 100 years that he has been, 100 days that he's been elected. And another thing that didn't make the headlines here, but was a huge thing all over Twitter, is that apparently we can now go to the UK without a visa.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm. So now we can go
Is
to
that
the
going to be
EU.
embraced? Are people embracing that, or what do you think?
Well, people were asking for it because we can go to the EU without a visa. So, okay, it was kind of like in negotiations. So now it's a fact. It's going to be penciled down, and we will be able to go to the UK without a visa, which is great. But with
You can see Boris.
COVID and the way, let me see if I have little Boris.
You can see Boris down there. No, but Boris, you can go visit more Boris, right?
Oh yeah.
The
So
new prime
look,
minister.
I think that there's a lot of changes that are taking place that side of the country. A Chinese company just signed a deal to build the subway in Medellin, which is the third largest. They would say the second largest, but I say the third largest because my city is the second, in Medellin. So
Mhm.
there's just a lot of ties now between China and Colombia, and this new presidency that is left leaning.
Mhm.
It opens a lot of doors. It opens a lot of doors, and I'm really looking forward to it. I'm writing an article for a magazine in Colombia about the state of EVs in China, and well, you'll read all about it when I tweet about it.
Okay,
I have a lot of
go
questions
on,
about
AJ.
Colombia,
Yep.
Fernando. I have a lot of questions about it,
Do
but
ask, sir.
but this, I think we can have to save it for another time because we're running out of time. But
Sure.
yeah, I
Sure.
think one of my main questions was Colombia all these years has been a very much puppet government to United States, and I wanted to
Totally.
ask you what things are changing now. I mean, how and I know the United States is freaking out, but I just wanted to ask you what changes are being
They're
made, stuff like that.
they're losing a grip on their own backyard. They're losing a grip on their own backyard, which is South America. Bolsonaro is probably going to lose in Brazil, and Lula is going to win, another socialist. So it's just going to create a huge block of socialist or leftist leaning countries in Latin America that are just going to start looking at the next best thing, which is China, because they're fed up with America and their Monroe doctrine. So a lot of small changes and big changes taking place. Um, and yeah, it's something to keep an eye on, because
Yeah.
America's power of influence is really dwindling when you think about it. No major country in Southeast Asia is really dancing to the American tune. They're just not.
The,
And the same is happening in South America.
the funny thing was America, they had this summit of the Americas, I believe. Biden tried to organize it, and that was a complete failure. He tried
Mm.
he tried not to invite Venezuela, and other countries are standing up saying you cannot not invite Venezuela. You cannot basically dictate what South America's what what the summit's all about. You cannot dictate who comes, who cannot. You are not running this summit, and I think it was a
It's
complete
not your
failure. A
country.
lot of people didn't turn up, and he was the whole press tried to
Um,
play it down. But
you were asking me, AJ, so I'll tell you, Colombia has officially resumed diplomatic relations with Venezuela. This is something that America does not
Wow.
like. So, as I said, a lot of small changes and big changes that yeah, it's worth keeping an eye on, because
sure,
America doesn't like losing their grip on their backyard.
yeah, yeah.
Guys, I just got some interesting news sent to me here. This is China to open wider to the world. President Xi said on the 23rd here, Beijing, by Xinhua News. I'm going to have to learn how to say that news more appropriately. China will open its
Xinhua.
doors wider to the rest of the world. Xi Jinping, General Secretary of the Communist Party of China Central Committee, said Sunday. I love this quote here. We be steadfast in deepening reform and opening up across the board and pursuing high quality development, she said when meeting the press at the Great Hall of People, noting that a prosperous China will create many more opportunities for the world. Just as China cannot develop in isolation from the world needs China for its development, she said. Through over 40 years of relentless reform and opening up, China has created the twin miracles of the fast economic growth and long term social stability. He said the Chinese economy has great resilience and potential. She said its strong fundamentals will not change and it will remain one on the positive trajectory over the long run. Amazing words from an amazing week that we've seen here in China. Gentlemen, I'm going to hand over the microphone to both of you. Who wants to go first? Who wants to close? And then we'll leave the chat open to everyone for about 5 minutes. Whoever wants to go first, let me know. And then
Let me go
one will.
first.
Okay,
Well,
Fernando
no,
will
you
go
can go
first.
second because I have a question for you, Fernando. So that's why I wanted
Okay.
you to go
Go, AJ.
second. So first of
Okay.
all, thanks for everyone for listening. But I have a really important question because I asked this question to Alex, but I wanted to get your thoughts on it as well. So as a Westerner, I think we in the West, we do not understand why China is still under lockdown. And I can understand, China being locked down when the first virus came out and the whole world was in lockdown. But the West has been, basically open for over a year now, and China is the only country is still under lockdown. And the fact is, the current basically we have the Omicron version, which is a very mild version compared to the first version that came out, which was the Delta, which was very severe, kills a lot of people. But the Omicron is actually what you would say a flu in the West. I mean, isn't it maybe a good time to open up and get people into antibodies using the Omicron? Because in the West, especially UK, nobody's dying from the Omicron, and it's only people who are dying are extremely ill or extremely old, or they don't have any medical care or health care or something like that. But the Omicron is a very mild version. You would say that it's a very mild version of a flu, even. So why is the point of locking down a whole city just for a flu? I mean, that's something the West still does not understand at the moment. Can you explain
Okay,
that?
you just ask a 1 hour question. Let me try to summarize. Okay, when you say lockdown, China is not in lockdown. Cities, towns, villages are in lockdown. So it's to
Yeah, I
say
mean
that
cities.
it's not what's 2020, right? What they've done over the last 3 years is refine the way that they implement this COVID policy, the zero COVID policy. And right now, as I was saying at the beginning of the show, for example, they can detect a case and within 3 days they go through all the different testing of all the different residents in that particular building, that particular area, and they go back to their normal lives. So we're not talking about long lockdowns. It's like, hey, we detected something here, everybody gets tested, everybody gets 3 days, 3 tests, and let's see what else we find. So they're micro targeting the virus now. Let me give you an example. Where my in-laws live in Henan, one building is locked down, the other building is not locked down, and they're like, basically they share a courtyard because they didn't find anything in this building, they didn't find anything in that building. It's that level of micro targeting the virus. Now,
Yep.
What is the big issue? The big issue is holidays. Whenever you have holidays, people travel. Here in China, people are just not going out of the country. Most people are traveling within China. What happened in Xinjiang? Millions of people went to Xinjiang in summer. What did we see after summer? After the summer holiday, the school vacation? Huge amount of cases in Xinjiang and huge amount of cases in different pockets around the country. But again, it's not a national lockdown, it's pockets, and you can open a map and see, look, I've been traveling in an
I'm in
RV
pockets, like
for the
Shanghai was
last
locked down, now Chongqing was locked down. So it seems to
here.
be,
Okay, you're talking about Shanghai a few months back,
Yep.
a couple of months
and now
back.
now Chongqing.
You gotta
me-
sure, you've got to understand that Shanghai is probably the most liberal city in China, and there's a scuffles between central government and Shanghai, and they reacted slow. They dropped the ball. They fumbled and they struggled. And when you don't act quickly, the spread is so freaking fast. So that's all on Shanghai governance. That is all on Shanghai. The other thing that took place was when they finally started doing what Beijing was telling them to do, what did we see? Back to normal, or back to these micro-targeted COVID cases. The other thing that you have to understand, and you mentioned it very, very, very clearly, is just like a flu. It only affects like people who are very sick or very old. There are 150 million elderly in China. How many people are there in the UK? Imagine the whole population of 150 million at risk.
Yeah.
Because those are people that haven't been vaccinated because either they have preconditions that the doctors do not recommend them to vaccinate, or there's no vaccination mandates here. It's not mandatory. So some older people that are very traditional, they prefer not to vaccinate. So the reality is that there's 150 million elder people that are at risk. If you open up, you're basically signing the death sentence, or putting a large number of people at risk, which will put the health system in very, very difficult situation.
Yeah.
This is why. There's other reasons, but I hear the music playing, so that's my take. So if you have any last words or before we go, or I should just close the show, what do you want to do?
No, let's close the show. We'll carry on. I'm sure viewers have more questions for the next one.
All right, guys, thank you all
next
so much for watching, and remember, we're going to leave the music playing for a little bit. If you want to finish up with your comments, feel free to do so, and well, thank you so much for watching, and you know what to do. If you like our content, make sure to go to our channels and subscribe, and hit the like button, share, comment, and until we see you again, take it easy, and bye for now.